Two movies, three rounds, one winner. Welcome to the Movie Battle Podcast. And it's another edition of the Movie Battle Podcast. It is October, and it is horror season.
I'm scared, Bart.
That was a horror episode, was it? Or a Halloween or a Trio House of Horror episode?
No, that was Ralph, wasn't it? When with the police master key.
I thought you were doing Homer saying, "I know, I'm scared too." Oh, then it was like
that
Homer...
was the asteroid.
Oh yeah, Homer was right all along.
Yeah.
I know, I'm scared too, kid.
That's it.
Yeah.
Hello and welcome to the Simpsons Reminiscing Podcast.
And also the first episode in this, as I said, October season of horror episodes, or horror-centric episodes. Not so much us in a horror, but us talking about horror.
We're in a horrible state here at the moment.
This week it is George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead versus Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later.
The one that started it versus the one that reignited it.
Or even I would say as well, like it's also like Night of the Living Dead is probably the quintessential zombie movie from America, and then 28 Days Later is the quintessential zombie film of the UK.
That's true, but I think more so, I mean, Night literally started everything, set the rules, slow walking creatures, you kill them by destroying the brain, and then 28 was about, zombies weren't really a thing in film for decades, really, and then 2002 it kind of reignites the fire that is still going pretty strong.
I see Walking Dead is obviously a prime example of that. Although I think they're coming into their last season right now.
Yeah, they are, but I think they have like loads, about 45 spin-offs or something. But yeah, no, Walking Dead is one of many, franchises and
there's so many different
movies and TV
variants as
series
well
and comics
of the zombie film. Even there's like, even the ones like Demons, and they have a kind of a zombie feel about them.
Yeah, but then you have stuff like Shaun of the Dead,
Return of the Living Dead.
You have Zombieland. A lot of. But I'm saying just more recently. I'm saying since 2002, a lot of zombie stuff really started taking off again. And 28 was a huge reason for that. Night obviously is a huge reason zombie movies are a thing at all. But with that, will we dive into it?
Yeah, opening round.
With round one. Music. So tonight, both films are kind of a little all over the place regarding music. And Night, while listening to it, I remember I was surprised. I was kind of...
Is that the composer's name?
That's the thing. I'll get to that in a second.
Oh, okay. Usually you start where you give the info.
And this is why...
I give the info on the directors and you give the names of the composers.
I'll explain why I'm not in a second. This is what I'm leading to. So, but when I started watching the movie, I hadn't seen the movie in a few years. I'd seen it, I think, twice before. I'm rewatching it this week when we did. I was kind of struck by how, I would say, I don't mean this as an insult, but old-fashioned the music sounded. Like, I heard more... it reminded me of Hollywood from a past era. Like, even I heard kind of King Kong-esque, kind of reminded me of, 30s, 40s rather than late 60s, going to 70s. But the reason for that is that there was no music written for this film. They reused music from all over the place, from movies, from TV shows, and then afterwards edited it slightly.
It's funny you mentioned TV shows, just because I thought the opening music I thought was just extremely 60s, but I got such a strong Batman vibe about it.
Really?
Yeah, the Adam West Batman series.
Okay, go on.
I thought like the early stages, particularly, I thought the music just didn't match. It felt like it was 60s, but I didn't think it matched or suited the tone of the film. in the early portions of it. I said I felt like I was in a Batman episode and I heard the music.
Really?
Yeah.
Because to be honest, my mind went towards Twilight Zone mixed with Star Trek TOS, the original series with Kirk and Spock, with Shatner and Nimoy back in the 60s. That kind of 60s-y vibe I got from the music. Even a little bit of Planet of the Apes as well, the original Planet of the Apes. That kind of slightly surreal, early synth tinge on a classic kind of style, that classic Hollywood style score. And that's what I heard. And then afterwards, I realized that that's exactly what it was. It was classic Hollywood with, they went in afterwards with synthesizers and tweaked things a little bit just to give them kind of a slight little more edge. I'll be honest, I thought it worked. I thought it suited the film really well, actually.
Well, as I said, it was with the opening kind of portion of the film. I thought there was some stuff that did work later in it. That I thought, did suit the tone of what was happening and was effective. I just thought the early kind of portions of it, with them coming up to the graveyard and her being chased by that zombie from up into the house where they take refuge.
Yeah.
I just thought that was. I felt like it was an episode of Batman or something. But I thought there was a moment though, like where again I always kind of just go to specific points to kind of make my point on the music. But the bit where Ben is like he's bolting up the doors and the windows, and then there's just kind of it's like a nice kind of plodding beat, kind of, and it really kind of mirrors the slow kind of plodding walk of the zombies, even though they don't refer to them as zombies in the film.
Ghouls.
Yeah, but it has that. I thought it mirrored it well. It was kind of this slow plodding kind of beat to it after we'd finished bolting up all the doors and the windows.
I like that as well. Oh, what I liked a little earlier than that was I thought the chase music when she's being chased by the ghoul, I liked that. I thought it worked, and also when she first comes into the house and she's searching around, there's real tense string section going, very classic kind of actually a very similar era, but Psycho kind, not as high pitched and not as shrill as the Psycho strings, but of a similar ilk, I thought, and similarly creating that sense of tension and unease as she enters the house, and you don't know what's inside, who's inside.
I thought the best bit of music used was the Officer Tom and I think it was
Judy.
Judy. When they get the explosion with the car, when the petrol and that, and then after it's on fire, and then they're eating the remains. This is kind of like it's like a vibrating drum effect.
Yeah,
it just seems kind of otherworldly, kind of this bizarre and strange. I thought that was really cool, effective music in that point.
Yeah, no, I thought that worked. One moment that I actually really liked again was earlier, and actually it was a lack of music, but it was just a sound effect of just the crickets chirping in that scene where Ben in particular and Barbara are telling their stories about how they kind of got there, and that we'll get into that later with characters. But in that scene, I thought just there was no music; it was just crickets, and just emphasized the scene. Knowing when not to put in music is a huge decision, an important decision as well. When less is more.
Well, they also did the same when Ben is shot at the end. I thought there was no music. It was so just.
It felt like a newsreel or something.
Yeah, it felt even like anticlimactic. Not that it wasn't, but it just felt like that. Just oh, he's gone.
You're deflated. And there was also a nice moment with just as Ben is when he's spraying the was it kerosene, I think, onto the chair to light it on fire when he pushes it out into the porch. Just as he's doing that, there's a lovely piece, a very subtle kind of a female vocal. It's quite haunting. It's I never would have thought like put it in like like a subtle haunting voice in a zombie movie. But I thought it worked there. I thought it added a real element of unease. And that it was very short, but it caught my ear.
Even at the very end as well, like after they've shot Ben, there's a music that kicks in at the end, and it kind of has this, just like there's something kind of not quite right with the music. Like there's something not quite right with what they're doing, even though they're trying to do the right thing. But there's something about they're pretty much taking the law into their own hands, like, and there's no kind of
Well, I don't think it's that. I mean, like that guy is a cop.
no, but yeah, maybe that's not the right word, but you're kind of like there's no kind of like containment rule for them in some ways. It's very kind of
What, like almost
haphazard kind of the way
you're
to go
thinking
about
like
it.
they're almost like vigilantes or something.
Yeah, some way it's kind of it's not properly kind of.
I agree with you that it feels wrong.
Yeah,
it feels like what they're doing is wrong, and that's the
it's
whole
careless.
point.
It's careless. In some
we'll
ways.
get into it later with characters and with horror, I would say. But like for me, Night, I thought, again, I've used this word a lot. It was serviceable. The music, it did its job, and at moments I thought did it very well. But were large parts of it where I didn't really notice the music at all. It didn't stand out to me. It didn't elevate or detract. It just did its job.
Yeah. It peaked at moments. There was moments where it really excelled, and there were moments where it was just, at a standard kind of level.
I'd agree. For me, that's on Night. Do you want to move on to 28?
Yeah, no, I'm ready to move on.
Okay. So, 28 then, for me, the first thing I notice again, which is similar to when Ben is telling his story, is when he wakes up in the hospital and you hear nothing, like utter silence. Just a sound of him moving. There isn't a sound of a clock ticking or a door swinging or a window creaking. It's just silence, absolute silence.
It reminded me of the scene in Walking Dead with Rick.
It's very, very, a lot of people compare those two. I mean,
when did Walking Dead, the comic first?
Walking Dead came out, I think it was 2006.
Do you think that was like a
well, Robert Kirkman has commented on this. He said that he wrote the intro to The Walking Dead before he saw 28 Days Later, and he saw it and he was like, oh no. But he said, look, it's like the first issue, the first few pages. I'll just stick with it because he was really liked his intro and he thought it worked really well. So he said, look, so be it. But 28 came out first. But yeah, they are basically the exact same. Although, they're basically the exact same. I mean, they both wake up. I mean, I was spoilers for The Walking Dead. I mean, it's literally like 10 minutes into the first episode. But that sense of unease as he first gets up, wakes up, then walks through the hospital, checking the phone. Just the sound of the phones clinking, like small noises that you wouldn't even notice in a film become so loud.
Yeah.
I think the phrase "the silence was deafening." You could definitely apply here.
What I did like was there was kind of when he was walking down the streets of London, and it's kind of these kind of gentle guitar kind of flicks, but it's almost like they're barely there because there's barely a flicker of life, bar him say that we can see, and there's a little tiny flick of the guitar. But then you see as he kind of reads the newspapers and he kind of starts to discover a little more. The music starts to intensify because he's starting to gather more info on what's going on.
And panic, realization of what actually is going on and what has happened. I mean, you really do just get a sense of just the absolute dread and fear you must feel as he maybe potentially thinks that he is the last person alive. You know what I mean? Like if you're in the middle of London, like we bump into London, it's like when you're walking around London, walking across by Westminster. You never see it like that. And like when they filmed this, like I think it was just after dawn, on a Sunday morning. But even still, they had to they only had 3-minute windows where the road was closed for them.
Yeah.
So that's why, and this is something we could bring up at any point really, but that's one of the reasons why they filmed it digitally. They filmed it on digital video rather than on film, and that's why it's in standard definition. And I'll be honest, I don't really like that decision. It took, for me personally, I would have enjoyed it more if it had been shot in film. I mean, I don't know if high definition digital video was possible at the time. I assume not, because I imagine why would they pick standard definition if high definition was available? But Daniel Boyle did it as a choice on purpose. He was trying to convey the I don't know. And we're kind of I'm going into too much detail on this rather than in the music. We'll come back to that later. But
Like, I liked
go on.
when Joey's heading to his parents' house, and there's this kind of like
Yeah,
it's like a gentle kind of hymn,
it is a hymn. Yeah,
and
abide
it's
with
like
me. It's
you're basically
called.
mourning at a funeral kind of
That's
thing, you know.
exactly how I felt as
Yeah,
well. Yeah,
which was cool.
like you know they're dead before you even
Yeah,
walk in. It just softly haunting.
it's kind of just you're just waiting for the inevitable.
Yeah, you know, like, and then that's it. Like you feel kind of like with Mark and Selena, you were kind of like, we all know except for Jim that
Mm-hmm.
they're dead. But you know, if you're Jim, you're gonna have to
Yeah,
check.
you have to have that
go for
hope
it.
just to
Yeah,
cling to
yeah.
something.
And similarly, another hymn comes in, but this one is almost a hymn of hope when you have Ave Maria play as a group after they've met Frank and Hannah and they decide to leave to go to Manchester,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
But someone
a
are driving in the vehicle,
yeah
and
in
it's
the
like,
taxi yeah
I know that piece. I just can't.
Ave Maria.
No, there's a different piece than I'm thinking of.
Just as literally as they leave the city, as they're just leaving
Yeah,
through the
no, it's
city.
not that. It's a different.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I'm talking
that's
about.
right.
That hymn there again is a different,
Mm.
and there is the theme of religion in the movie, and we'll get to that later. But it's interesting that they would use several hymns, um, one of mourning, and then one of hope.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I think they I'll just touch. I'll say no because the next one up, the signature score, it's fantastic, and then how it intense in that scene where with the soldiers when he comes back in, and how it intensifies and there's that sense of it encapsulates kind of everything that's happening. So there's the desperation, all or nothing, do or die, just intensity, the whole see that 8 minute sequence whatever it was with that music, people being infected and trying to get out of there, you're running for your life, terrified, the brutality of it, everything. It just it conveys all of those emotions and feelings, in one.
yeah, I agree entirely. You've jumped a little ahead because I had a couple more things to bring up, but
You can go back to them. That was the next one I
but
had.
just on that one, yeah, I mean that scene is I have epic of the epicness as I've written down. That scene and music together just work so well, and you know that was done by John Murphy. Okay, so I didn't even mention that earlier, but John Murphy wrote the score of this, but he didn't write all of the pieces in it. There are several pieces that are done by other artists as well, and that's why I was saying both films actually have multiple
Composers or
composers
artists.
or artists, musicians
Mm-hmm.
who did the music for it. But it was John Murphy who did most of the music, and he did this in the House in a Heartbeat, that epic piece that suits that climactic battle so well. The slow build, the throbbing, just hard action on display, being mimicked perfectly with the music and picking up the beats as we went along, exactly emphasizing a moment of action and a moment of down and then action again. Yeah, it's like an amazing music video. Um, but I want to go back a little bit just to one scene. I think maybe even my favorite scene in the movie is the scene at the Abbey when they see the horses running, and you have an ending,
That's
Ascent
the piece.
by Brian
Yeah.
Eno.
Yeah, that's a great piece.
That is absolutely amazing. And it's just beautiful, haunting,
Hope.
but hopeful. Yes, like it's weird. It's like it's sad but hopeful as well, and it's the moment that solidifies them as a family.
Mm.
And seeing the family of the horses, they're seeing hope, and they're taking that hope from them onto themselves, and the music captures that perfectly. Um, I think in that moment they see that the world can still be beautiful and worth fighting for, even in this savagery that they're now living in.
Mm-hmm.
That there are still moments of true beauty in life, and I think that really impacts Selena. Or at least it mirrors, and that she hears the music, but it mirrors her feeling at that moment when she realizes that there is more than just survival. Um, Also, after that, then as well, there was the music of just sorrow and pain when Frank becomes infected. It's such a sad scene, and I thought the music just really elevated and emphasized that emotion that we're feeling there.
Especially that like it came about so it was so avoidable.
Oh yeah, that was a real gut punch. But we'll get into that more later on. I think in the later rounds, I'd say. But I think I'm ready to vote. You ready to vote?
Yeah.
Okay. For me, it's no contest really. I think 28 takes it all the way.
Yeah, like Night has like moments where it excels and is really effective, but I think on a whole, 28 Days Later is the better soundtrack.
Yeah, agreed. Definitely. Actually, one thing before we go on, when I was listening, I was looking for Night of the Living Dead soundtrack on Spotify. I always try to listen to the soundtracks as I'm writing up my notes, just gonna get myself back into the mood of the film. And I couldn't find it on Spotify.
Yeah, I don't think it was on it.
But what I did find was like a like synth wave style remake. It was really fun actually. I think you should check it out. You'd like it. But I can't remember who it was by. But if you type in Night of the Living Dead soundtrack into Spotify, you'll find it.
Wait, Night or 28 Days Later?
Now, did I say 28 Days Later? No, not Night of the Living Dead.
Okay.
It's like a synth kind of remix or remake of the entire score. Really fun actually. Listen to it actually tonight. Yeah, just worth checking out. Okay, so it is 2-0 to 28 Days Later. And in the next round, our newest round to our repertoire, it is round 2, horror.
Well, I mean, you're talking about horror films, but it's only fitting that a category has to entail horror.
We got to. Okay, so starting off with Night. So opening up, we see the George Romero, who directed the film, utilizes Dutch angles a lot in this film.
Dutch angles?
Dutch angle is the easiest way to describe it is Adam West Batman in the villain's lair. It's always like at an angle.
Oh yes, yeah.
The Dutch angle is used usually to create a sense of kind of something is off or something is is not right, or and I feel like it does that. It sets the mood straight away that when they get out of the car, the Dutch angle, and then also when just after Johnny is killed, and when she kind of stumbles over through a tree and he comes after her, and it's again at a Dutch angle, and they use it throughout the film a lot. But I liked it. It set the mood straight away. That obviously we know going in is a horror film, right? And obviously I didn't go into Night of the Living Dead not having heard of Night of the Living Dead. I went in expecting a good horror film, but I mean, the first time I ever watched it. But I wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was. But I thought straight away it sets up the atmosphere and the mood of the film with Dutch angles.
I like the isolation effect of it. Just as like not a soul in sight. It's kind of eerie,
Similar to 28 Days Later as well.
Yeah, very similar. Which I think that's nice and kind of displays on the whole thing of like, most people have been killed by this, this outbreak or whatever it is, or quite a number of people anyway. Also the first zombie, he kind of walks like Frankenstein's monster. It's very kind of rigid.
He does a bit. Yeah.
I wonder, was that like I always seem to say it was at a tip of the hat every week.
I never noticed
but
it.
Everything is influenced by everything, I guess.
Yeah, like everyone is influenced by every something else. I mean, it's just a way of art, isn't it?
Why didn't the zombie eat Johnny though? I never got that. Like he was sort of chasing her. I don't understand.
Yeah. I mean, maybe he just eaten. He wasn't hungry.
So stock up for later.
Or maybe it was just something as simple as like a moving target draw his attention more. It's kind of like our dog, where you should have a bowl full of food, but if you're eating something, she'll come over and want that instead. So maybe it's just like it's moving food, it's drawing his attention or whatever.
So when we die, we become more like dogs.
Yeah, maybe. But what I loved about him is that, again, it's that suggestion of something being off. Like he's in the distance, and like Johnny's messing with her, and she's like, stop being, weird. Like he'll gonna hear us, like typical siblings messing, and there you really get a sense of their relationship as brother and sister in the short space of time they're together. They actually click really well together, the actors, I thought. But I love that kind of, in the distance we know what he is, but they don't,
Mm.
and it is that subtle horror that I really like.
Figures in distance are always
Yeah,
creepy.
yeah, because it's the
The sense of
audience,
what is to
the
come.
character can't see it, but we're anticipating what is going to happen, and they're joking, and we're knowing, no, 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 don't joke, run.
Do you know when she goes into the house and she you hear this kind of like it's like a dripping sound,
Yeah,
and then she just looks at her arm and it's like blood,
yeah,
and you're just kind of wondering, where did that what's happening there? It's almost like it's just beginning to peel and unravel and reveal the horror that is to ensue
yeah.
throughout the night. You know, it's nice.
Yeah, and like, when she first comes into the house, like that whole scene, I thought was great. Like that, there's a real sense of tension. I was saying earlier, I like the music that they utilized there, but I thought that whole scene worked, except for the animal scene, like the animal heads, the trophies.
Yeah, I didn't.
It doesn't make
Mm.
any sense. I
Was that
wasn't
frowned
sure.
upon back then more so than it is now? I don't know.
No, not at all. The only thing I could think of was maybe like that the people are prey, like she is now prey, like those animals were
Mm.
preyed upon, and the humans
It's like
now
a
are the
symbolic
prey
thing from
of the ghouls. But that's probably it. But I'll be honest, it felt off to me. It didn't really make sense. Especially also her reaction wasn't as horrified as the music
Mm.
suggested it should be, and there felt a mismatch there. I'd say they picked the music after the fact rather than, but
There's a moment where Ben he's bought by the car and he's like killing one of the zombies,
yeah,
and then you just kind of see others kind of just like turn and look at him, and they have this kind of like it's like this kind of intent, but this kind of trance like look in their
yeah,
eyes, and they're moving slow, but their intentions are so clear, and they walk kind of slowly in these kind of droves towards him. It's very kind of unsettling.
yeah, very much so. It's something that I think a lot of zombie films and TV shows don't do anymore. Is the subtle zombie.
Mm.
Um, the and I think it works well when we're using the zombie as an allegory as well for humanity. Is that these aren't like monsters? These are people. These were people maybe an hour ago, maybe a week ago, or I don't know, maybe a few months ago. But they all look pretty fresh. So I'd say they just died, or in the last few days. Um, and when you see a person, like especially when you see the distance shots, and you see like a well dressed man or a woman in a lovely kind of frock or something, and these are like the clearly respectable people in the community, and there's something just so off-putting about a normal person that we all know, a neighbor, a family member, who is now acting in such an inhuman manner. It's really creepy.
Mm.
It's really unnerving, and I think sometimes more so than the rotting, melting, ghoulish zombie, which can work really well as well.
I have to say that a female zombie that had this kind of crusted, kind of mangled
Yeah,
looking face, which I thought did look quite
that's actually
off.
that's actually the makeup artist who did the makeup
Was
for the
it
whole
was a very
movie.
good job.
That was her. She did her own makeup on that scene as well, but she ate the insect.
Mm.
Yeah, and see, and I think by doing that, I think also they brought that in a little later, and it suggested that because like we have to remember as well, the movie was released and people didn't know the rules to zombies the way we did going in. Like we went in knowing exactly the tropes, a lot of moments from just from pop culture, but they had to establish the rules. So, like at that point in the film, we don't even know if these people are alive or not. I think obviously the big hint is when you see the cadaver, the naked woman, and she has the morgue tag around her arm.
Mm.
Clearly, she was in a morgue and she woke up and came out. That's obviously why she's naked, and that's why she's walking there with the morgue tag on her hand. A little subtle detail. I never noticed that the first couple of times I watched it, but I noticed it the last time.
Even when they hear the on the radio, you just hear like or the news reports, like eating the flesh of the people they killed. It's like imagine hearing a broadcast report in the news of that.
Yeah.
It's just like
And
insane.
actually, um, one part, like the kind of my amongst my favorite parts of horror in this film were the news reports because they felt so real. They
Mm.
really genuinely felt like real news. Like you felt like you
When
were
they're following
watching.
the what was that scientist guy, and it was some other
Yeah.
mayor. That was
Oh my god,
really a
it
good
was
job
done
with the
so
interviewers.
well,
It felt like
so
so authentic.
realistic. The way they'll stumble over the words, they'd stop. No, no, yeah, they'd say something, then stop, pull back. Go, no, 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 we
Mm.
can't.
It was
And
really
then,
good acting.
oh my god, and like I was saying, like I would love a feature length fall documentary that portrayed like a fictional disaster in that way. Like, um, it really added to the realism of it, and you kind of it helps you get involved in it. And I can imagine if you were back in the day, it helped you accept
Mm.
something so crazy an idea as the dead rising, which I mean, I know obviously we had Frankenstein's monster and stuff like that, but this felt a little more real.
For me though, the most kind of horrific horror moment of the film is kind of it's kind of more with the struggle between Ben and Harry, and like Helen kind of having to witness, her husband, who's clearly in the wrong,
Mm.
basically being shot to death, and then seeing her daughter eat her dead husband, and then kind of just resigned to her fate, and she's stabbed to death, and then eaten by her daughter.
Yeah, it's a
That's
truly gruesome
yeah.
sequence of events. Unsurprisingly startling at the time, still startling now. I mean, it really is. It's unnerving. It's disturbing.
And there's a
Uh,
weird kind of sound effect, kind of almost like a weird scream kind of thing when she's being killed. It's like it's really some weird kind of sound effect they use when she's being stabbed in the cellar.
yeah,
I don't know what they used for that, but it
I'm
kind of
not
added. It was
sure.
really just bizarre and just I don't know,
But I mean,
strange.
like, seeing a child kill somebody on screen now is still shocking. Seeing it in 1968, and this was released, I think a few months before the MPAA came in, so there was no ratings.
Mm.
So this was completely unrated.
So
Anybody could walk in
children
off
could
the
go
stage.
see it.
4 year olds, like Roger Ebert, I think it was his first ever review. He reviewed this, and he reviewed it negatively, not because the movie was bad, but because he was angry at the children that were watching it.
Mm.
He said he looked over and he saw a 9 year old girl rocking in her chair crying, and he said this isn't, he said, like, and then he goes on talking about, when you see your hero going through the events he does, just the gruesome acts going on, like, he said, like, the noise stopped about 10-15 minutes into the movie and it was just silence in the cinema. And he said, and then the tragic end, he
Mm.
said, it's just that children should not be watching this. And I think he's right, children shouldn't be watching it, but I do think he was a bit overly critical of the movie. I think he was just angry at the situation. But
Mm.
but a couple other moments that I loved again where the horror really came out. A similar moment was after um Judy and her fiance, what's his name again?
Tom.
Tom and Judy. Like when they go up in the explosion and then like you see the zombies eating them.
Mm.
It's really it's really dehumanizing to be devoured after you die. Like you're like obviously for humans when we have a funeral, we revere the dead. We embalm them and we dress them in the best clothes and we put them on display, and we pray with them and we think of them and we remember them and then we bury them in a very respectful manner. And these are people that were trying to save themselves and a group of people they just met explode and then just be devoured. It's just a really repulsive image, and still really startling today. And that's even before we get on to uh, the Cooper's daughter. Um, yeah, but another moment actually that I really, really liked as well uh, was Ben's story. When he's telling his story to Barbara about,
About outside the diner.
yeah, and like how he narrates that story to us. I mean, it's not visual horror on display, but you feel his horror, his internal horror. Um, it's really, I mean, I felt like it was the best acting in the film, and it's really effective. Effective and affective. It affected me. I really cared for him in that moment, and you really feel the pain that he's clearly trying to like contain. Like they're all panicking. He's trying to keep control of things, but you see, he's describing that, and
He does say that he is scared as well, doesn't he?
Yeah.
You're scared, I'm scared too.
yeah, no, definitely. But that's when you really see. That's the only time you really see his fear. I feel, and I wonder, like he's describing it to Barbara, but I feel like he's almost more so describing it to himself, to reiterate that yes, this did actually happen. I thought it was a fantastic moment, and a different type of horror.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me, the final piece of true horror is Ben's death. And again, similar in a way to how the zombies consuming Tom and Judy. It's Tom and Judy, isn't it? How can you?
Yeah, Tom and
Yeah.
Judy. Yeah. I thought it was Julie, but you said it was Judy.
I'm pretty sure it's Judy. I had it written down in my head. Anyway,
It's close enough, anyway.
I love the fact that Ben's death, or his aftermath of his death, is shown to us in photographs, like newspaper or like just newspaper accounts, like something you'd see printed. Because this is 1968. The civil rights movement is very much. I mean, Martin Luther King was assassinated in '68. Racial tensions are extremely high, and you have a black hero of a movie survive and then be killed by white police. And then just being the way his body is just being grabbed and moved and dumped. Again, really dehumanizing, like earlier with the zombie. I felt like it's the same thing, and it's clearly a commentary on the racial tension of America at the time, and it's really, really powerful and really horrifying.
Yeah, no, it was. As I said, it was like to me, it's a jarring, such a jarring end to it. He gets through the night. Everyone else has perished, and he should be safe now without with him coming over.
Yeah, like morning is safe. Night is danger. Morning is safe. I mean, they're the rules of horror. That we know.
Most of the time, anyway.
Most of the time, but yeah, no, I thought it was really impactful. Excellent ending. Very powerful. We move on to 28.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to start?
Yeah. Okay. So just before I get into where the scene where I'm walking around London, there's a small bit at the very beginning with the scientist when the like animal rights people weren't there.
Yeah.
And when they're opening up the cage or the tunnel thing, and you can just see him when he's like, you see him screaming like, "Stop! You don't know what you're doing."
Yeah.
You can tell the terror he knows, like how dangerous and how serious this is. Like, do not scream. So he's terrified. Like, do not do this. I just thought that was kind of to help set the tone for how serious this whole thing would become.
Agreed completely.
Yeah.
Like the panic in his voice, when they're suggesting letting them out, and then when he gets out, he's just like, "Kill her, kill her." He's like, there's no remorse. Like he's not like, "Oh, let's figure out, let's see if it's."
She has to be disposed of right now.
Kill her now, or else the world is gone. Like that is what he's feeling right there and then, the weight of the world on his shoulders. And like you say, it perfectly sets up the enormity of what is released into the world.
So then obviously we get into Jim waking up in the hospital, and there's that dead silence of him walking through London. Like, as we kind of touched on earlier, seeing London like that is just like, you never see that. It's one of the coolest scenes you're going to see in any film ever.
It's a phenomenal scene.
And then
just before we go on, and I didn't think this watching it, because watching it I very much felt as you felt, and I'm sure as most people feel, that sense of isolation and fear of the situation, and just struggling to understand what's going on. But when I was doing my notes tonight, I was just thinking it's kind of like a bizarro version of Kevin McAllister waking up in Home Alone when it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I made my family disappear.
With that silence where he's calling out like Buzz.
Yeah, and he's going around the house and it's like there's gone. It was like a bizarre version of that. But I did not feel that during the film. I very much was impacted by the scene the way Danny Boyle and the lads intended. But I just thought I'd throw that in.
But when he picks up the money, all the money, it kind of
Yeah.
shows how life has been altered so much that something as important as wealth no longer matters.
Yeah, I mean, you may just wake up one morning and suddenly money doesn't exist.
Yeah, but you just see he sees all this money just disregarded in the steps, and it's like because he picks up a lot of it first. He's probably assuming, "Whoa, this is handy. I'm for all this money,"
Yeah, and similar to the money, then as well, you see him walking through London, and you see like in the background this billboards, the big smiling, beaming faces
one of them's very
behind
clear.
him. And that was again a nice imagery.
One of my favorite moments though is when they walks into the church and there's calmness and stillness, and then we see all these dead bodies on top of each other, and then when he says hello, and there's this sudden pop up of like maybe 2-3 bodies, and just look in their faces. The first time you really kind of see them, and you're just like, oh my god, why did you just get out of there? Get out of here now.
But even before that, and I agree with you entirely in what you just said there, but even before that, when he first walks into the church and you see the crucifix, really high up in the frame, and he's underneath it, like he's clearly, because traditionally through history, churches have been sanctuary, like during a war or something like that, like there was hallowed ground, like you don't there's no violence on a church on holy ground, and people
it's off limits from the rest.
Yeah, people go there for as they say, sanctuary. And famous the Hunchback of Notre Dame, sanctuary. But when he's walking up the wall and you see the writing on the wall, again,
repent.
Was it it said the end is extremely effing nigh. The famous at the end is nigh, and the end is extremely effing nigh. And then, but when he walked up the stairs, I doubt it was a reference, but I thought it reminded me of Nosferatu. The famous scene where he ascends the stairs and the shadow on the wall.
Oh yes.
And I don't know if it's a reference. I mean, I don't see how they're that relatable, Nosferatu and Jim in that moment, but it reminded me, her going up in, the silent stairs.
Remember in the see the mass the newspaper that says mass exodus of British people, and like he's already going, what the hell's going on? And he sees this, is like, am I the only person left here? Has everybody gone? That's what I'd be thinking if I was him. I'd be like, what?
Of course,
is happening?
As I say, you see the bodies in the ground, and then something moves, and it's that look of pure animal, just non-humanness.
You know what really, really I found like just harrowing was, when Mark is telling the story about when they're trying to go to the airport.
Yeah.
And he's saying there's a big surge, and he's like literally walking on people.
Yeah.
Like that's how severe.
I'll be honest. I thought of Hillsborough.
So did I. I instantly thought Hillsborough. Just when he said surge, this is words I always hear when I hear about Hillsborough.
For anybody who doesn't know what we're talking about, it was in the 1980s.
89.
Yeah, 1980s. There was an English football match, and there was the stands became overcrowded, and over 100 people were trampled to death, crushed to death.
The only barriers back then, so there was no way out. It was
truly horrific accident, but
I thought that as well when I heard it.
It's very famous among British and Irish people. We'll all remember that, even though Liam wasn't even born when it happened. But it's one of those moments that in the collective conscience, we're all well aware of, especially as football fans. But yeah, we were both reminded of that very real, horrific event, real life event. Another moment, jeez, when he goes into the house with his parents. I mean, when you see him cover his face when he gets the smell, like he knows, but he has to go up and do it.
And then they have the letters, like basically saying that they hope he's dead. Don't wake up. Like we hope you're dead.
We're sleeping with you now.
Yeah. Imagine that being a situation where like we hope our son is dead.
That really hit me. I have to say that was truly just yeah. You just as I said earlier about Frank, but it was like a real gut punch. You're just like, oh my god, this is. I can't imagine that situation. Um,
Then you have like when they meet Frank and it's Hannah, isn't it, the daughter?
Hannah, yeah,
Yeah, and that, just a different type of horror, but like when they've all the buckets, and he's like saying that's been rain and days. This is F in England, But it's like it just shows like imagine like how much things have drastically changed in your life that you're just desperately trying to get a little bit of water,
yeah.
something that's essential for your survival. It just
Yeah,
kind of
I mean, like we felt it there. Well, a few weeks ago when we had the storm hit Ireland and we lost electricity for what was it, about a day and a half or so, and like you just life just changes immediately, and you have to learn to adapt. Like, can you imagine being like that for 28 days?
mm. Do you remember as well when they finally leave and they're in the it's kind of a taxi thing they're driving, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's taxi. Yeah,
Yeah, and like I was just thinking because they show Jim kind of looking out the window, and it's like you're in a taxi, which would always been such a normal thing to do, but he looks outside the window and he sees all this abnormal, rubble and like dead bodies and just barren wasteland. It's like something that would have been so normal going on riding in a taxi, and then you look outside and you see the reality of how abnormal things have gone.
yeah. No, it's another great moment. Uh, the next bit that for me that really stood out was the tire changing scene.
Oh, with the rats
And the
running away
tunnel.
from the
What an image!
yeah.
Like rats sprinting away as a group for fear of what's chasing them. That alone is an incredible image.
That was just a great horror scene.
Yeah, and then you hear them screaming. Like you can't see them, and you're just seeing the shadows just kind of come around the corner, but you hear them,
Mm.
and the panic in that scene was just done so well. Just everything about it, the way it was filmed, edited, acting, it was just really, really tense. It's one of the probably the best horror scene of the film. I'd say traditional horror scene, definitely.
Just because it was around that period in the film, and it's not a horror moment, but I figured Jill Whitworth went to the supermarket. I think
Yeah,
that was a nod to Dawn of the Dead.
quite
They
possibly.
they're in the supermarket and they get the baskets and they leave in the
Yeah,
shop. I think that was definitely a
yeah,
tip
yeah.
of the hat
I'd say
to Dawn of
so.
the Dead.
I did because the writer, I can't remember his name, but he was saying that when he was writing 28 Days Later, he was watching a lot of zombie films at the time. He said that when he was a kid, he loved zombie movies. Like he was a massive Night of the Living Dead fan. Obviously, you can't really be into zombie movies. You're not into Night of the Living Dead. Um, but he had kind of forgotten about zombies because zombies really weren't a thing for a long time in cinema. And then he started playing Resident Evil, the video game, and that reminded him, oh wait, zombies, yeah. And then he remembered how much he loved zombies growing up, and that made him want to write a zombie movie. Um, yeah, so it just when you say it's a nod to Dawn, it's very makes a lot of sense because he was saying he was watching a lot of zombie movies while he was writing, for inspiration and to get his mind in the right place. But another kind of moment I really like, kind of more of a subtle moment at first anyway, is when they're stopping after they go shopping when they stop for petrol,
Mm-hmm.
and like the fact they're really hesitant to go in, and then like it just kind of
Jim kind of like has a chip on his shoulder at that point.
he does a bit, but it establishes for me that like this like kind of like what we are saying earlier about the water on the rooftop. Your life has changed overnight, but like the idea of stopping to get petrol is now possibly a life ending decision. Mundane decisions are now life and death situations.
And then when he goes into that kind of diner, kind of whatever the restaurant, and he sees
Yeah,
the dead baby,
yeah.
which I instantly thought of Train Spotting,
Train spotting, yeah,
which
yeah.
obviously was another film
Danny
Danny
Boyle.
Boyle directed.
And then of course the little boy. I mean, because again, I kind of forgot until later in the movie when Major West asks him who have you killed, and I was like, oh wait, we didn't kill anybody. It's just the zombie. And I was like, oh wait, no, they're not dead. They're not dead. Like that was a living child he killed, which really kind of adds to the weight of that situation. I mean, your first time, I mean, obviously in that world, if you're going to survive, like Wes says, you have to have killed somebody. You can't be here if you didn't kill somebody. And he did. And the first time he killed somebody as a child, I mean, I can't imagine what that must do to you.
I was even wondering when they get to the base, I was wondering like how many people have actually come to that base and why are there no other people there?
Yeah, will you see the pit when they go out? There's plenty other bodies there.
Yeah, was that what it was? I was thinking, yeah. That's what I was thinking. I was like, first, like, bodies, are they zombies or are they actually...
Maybe that's it as well, but
Yeah.
I
figured it was. They killed...
But there's a suggestion that maybe not, you know?
I think it was, because like, I think other people would have heard that.
Who would have heard it?
Other people would have heard the thing, the distress, whatever the thing they call it, they heard on the radio.
Oh, sorry, yeah. I think it was other people maybe that didn't.
Yeah, they would have. I think that's what I thought myself. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute, are they zombies? But that's what I thought. I was like, I'd say there's some other people that they've killed in the past. Because you would think there's no one else there.
Yeah.
You think there'd be a couple of people.
I mean, like they came from London. Nobody came from
Manchester,
Liverpool, or Leeds,
or
Manchester.
But like it's weird, and at that point in the film, it's the soldiers that really become kind of the monsters.
Yeah, very much so.
Like this situation with the two girls, like
massively.
Selena and Hannah, like that's just like
that is true horror. Like I mean, that is a different type of horror, and there's unfortunately a very real horror. I mean, the idea of suggesting that and thinking that is a fair and right action. I mean, with a woman and a child, I mean, it's kind of too vile to think about in a lot of ways. But
like that to me, that's like darker than the stuff with the zombies, you know.
Yeah,
like that to me was probably the
it is the darkest moment in the film. It is. We did skip ahead of. Well, we can go into maybe in characters. It's okay with Frank, but we can talk about that in characters instead. It's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, and then like when Selena slips her the Valium just to like ease the pain. I mean, you're just like, oh my god, this is vile.
I thought though she didn't
get it
because when Scott Parker
explain yourself.
Scott Parker, that actor who comes in, he played Scott Parker in Dream Team, which was a fictional football soccer
British
club.
soccer soap aimed at men
in the late 90s, early 2000s, which we loved back in the day. But anyway, his character, when he comes in, I thought he caught him and he stopped it, but obviously she'd got a few of them in her, or maybe he let her take him. I don't know. Maybe he thought maybe he thought first
he kind of knocks on her hand, but she obviously got one or two before he could knock him out, because Jim even says later she's stoned. Yes, you see that, but she's still even being stoned, she has the wherewithal to go and get the photo of Frank and her mother. That's when she breaks off to get that photo of him. But I'll be honest, I thought, I don't mean this as a negative, but just moving on to the climax of the film, when Jim goes on his rampage, it almost becomes more like an action movie than a horror movie. In that scene, and it's an excellent scene. I really, really enjoyed it. Excellent action film, action scenes. But it didn't feel overly horror
compared to everything else that followed.
Yeah,
I kind of agree with that. I thought could have.
I don't mean as a negative. It's just an observation. Like we're talking about horror in the movie, so I think I loved those scenes, and there are elements obviously. I mean, the ghoul, or no, it is a zombie. Yeah, it's ghoul in night, zombie here. The zombie that they had chained up, when he goes on a rampage inside. Like, I mean, there are definitely horror elements, and obviously also when Hannah is hiding from Scott Parker behind the mirror, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's real.
That was a great moment.
Because at first I didn't realize she was in the room. I thought there was no one there, and then you kind of see,
I was the same. I didn't realize that was the same room she was in.
Yeah, they did that on purpose. I think, to make you go,
it was done well, because he's just looking at the mirror, and you're like, oh, he's just looking at his reflection because he doesn't understand what's going on. I wish it kind of just reminds me of the Hugo scene in The Simpsons. He's holding up
You've
the
probably
mirror.
never seen yourself.
Your reflection
yeah.
before. Dr.
Here.
Hibbert.
Bang.
But going back on topic, we really should do some kind of Simpsons related thing. I think obviously it's coming out of us because we're not talking about it enough. But that there are horror elements definitely in those scenes, and it's funny. Jim kind of became the monster.
Mm.
Uh,
So she even thinks that he's infected.
yeah, and again,
He's raged, which I'll probably touch about.
yeah, we're going to go more
his
on characters,
character,
but there are moments definitely in where he's like hunting them,
Mhm.
and he becomes the monster. They're scared.
Yeah.
It was not. I like when they kind of flip it like that. Sometimes it can really it can remind me a bit of Knowing the Spiders and Scream. That whenever the mask is removed, he seems kind of less powerful,
Mhm.
and there are times when they're chasing. I think you know what I'm talking about. Anyway,
It's even like in The Crow when he's killed and then when he comes back, even though he's the hero, they're kind of the vulnerable ones.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Similarly to that. But yeah, no, I thought the horror in this was fantastic. I really did.
Yeah, on many different levels.
Yeah, many different levels. I'm ready to vote. Are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
We go first this time.
Okay, I'll go first.
Oh no, I thought you went first.
Oh, did I go first? Okay,
Yeah, I
you
meant
fire
you want me
away.
to go first.
Fire away.
Really, I was saying I'll go first this time.
Okay,
if you want me to
sorry.
go first. I don't know. I don't know why I said that.
Go on.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with 28 Days Later for the horror. I think there's more moments of just like such as like with his parents, or I know we didn't touch it there, but what happened with Frank, with the two girls and the situation with the soldiers, and then even just moments like in the underground and him waking up and stuff about Mark's family going to the airport. There's so many moments. I don't know. I just thought, for me, I think 28 Days Later, I felt the horror more. I thought it was packed more of a punch. Not saying that Night didn't, but just I think I felt it more in 28 Days Later.
Okay, cool. For me, I thought it was really, really, really close. They have a lot of similar elements, and then they have a very different elements of horror to them. What the part you're talking about in 28 that I really loved, a lot of them were more sad and harrowing. Like there were phenomenal elements of horror, like the underground chase scene. In particular, we didn't actually mention, but the fact that the zombies sprint in this, it was just so revolutionary.
And their
idea.
eyes, when you
I'd
see a
never
close-up
seen
of
it.
their
Yeah,
eyes.
they look
vicious,
really, really
properly
interesting.
vicious and dangerous. I think
Yeah.
they're more dangerous in this one because of the fact they run and they're so determined to get
Yeah,
you.
no, I mean just the idea of a running zombie itself is terrifying.
Mm.
We didn't go into like when they're running up with the trolley scene up to the apartment with Frank and Hannah.
That scene.
And you hear it in Jim's voice, and he's like, "Wait for me," and he just real panic in his voice.
I think I touched on it in the characters, so I think that's why.
That's fine. That's fine. But yeah, no. So I mean, I thought the horror in this is phenomenal. But for me, the horror scenes that impacted me the most from both films were the little girl eating her parents, and the scene of the zombies eating
Tom
and Judy. Those two scenes for me disturbed me more than anything in 28 Days Later, and that's why I give it to Night of the Living Dead.
Fine. Again, I like when we have pick different, the opposite film.
Yeah, well, it's very rare that it's happened. This is only the second week where it's ever happened that we disagreed on a round. But that makes it 3-1 to 28 Days Later. So Night has to take both of our votes in the final round in order to take it to a tiebreaker where we will
lightning round.
The lightning round.
That's what we call it, the lightning round in honor of
Okay,
Ross.
that's fine. That's fine.
I will say just in closing on that on that category as well. I think it's interesting that for me, I like the biggest horror moments for me were actually when it was the humans struggling amongst each other.
Yeah.
In both films, which I thought was it's interesting that
Yeah, no, yeah.
There's a touch more realism, I guess, to it when it's actually the humans themselves.
Although I'll be honest, for me, I don't agree that it was the most horror. For me, the most horror was the zombies in it, but I think they're representations of us. So I agree with what you're saying as well, though. I think, and we'll go into them in characters. But anyway, but before we go on to the final round, we just want to say, be sure to check us out on social media. We're on Twitter and on Facebook. Every week when we release a new episode, we release a new piece of custom pixel artwork to coincide with episode. So be sure and check them out if you haven't been. If you're listening on the podcast, you're missing out on all the great artwork. And we're on YouTube, obviously, as well.
And yeah, just a little bit of fire, as we always say, fire us a little bit of feedback, and if you're enjoying the show or what you're liking about it, maybe stuff you think we could improve on, because we're enjoying doing it, but we hope you're enjoying it as well. We want you to have the best experience listening to it.
Yeah, so a comment or follow us, or on Twitter we're at I changed our handle on Twitter, so it's at Movie Battle Pod, POD. On Facebook, just Google or just search the Movie Battle Podcast. You can also find us through the hashtag the MBP on Twitter as well, and on Facebook. And on YouTube, we're the Movie Battle Podcast as well. So, and also our email is the Movie Battle Podcast at gmail.com. So if you have something you wanted to say, suggestions, whatever, throw them in there. We would really love to hear from you. So, final round. Round 3, characters.
Start off with Night.
Start off at Night, of course, chronologically. I don't know who you have or who you don't have. I threw Tom and Judy together.
I had a tiny bit on them. I had obviously Ben, a bit on Barbara, and then Harry and Helen.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Especially the ones in the house.
Yeah.
You might have a bit more on certain characters, and I might be the opposite.
Yeah. Because I'll be honest, I didn't go into detail on Helen, but I mean we can go into that. Yeah. So for me, like, Tom is the voice of reason in the house in a lot of ways, because I feel, and I don't want to get into Ben too much, but I feel like Ben and Harry clash a lot, and maybe clash a bit too much. I mean, not that it's not sensible. I mean, people in tense situations clash, but Tom is the one in the middle who's trying to kind of find the balance between the two of them. He understands where they're both coming from.
His heart is in the right place, as I said. Like but he's looking to contribute. He's
very much
and he's trying to bring the peace between them and make them meet in the middle as well.
Very, very much so. Like, and he's very brave.
Yeah.
Like he's willing to do the right thing. And for me, like, we have to remember as well. We talked earlier about the allegory of the racial tension in America when this film came out, but another massive, moment of real controversy in America at the time was the Vietnam War. Now, Tom is a young man. It was people his age who were being sent to Vietnam to fight in this war, to give up their lives. And it's been suggested by many previously that this is an allegory for the Vietnam War as well as racial tensions. And I really feel he sums that up. He bravely goes off to do the right thing. He's sent over. So many other innocent young men were sent to brutal deaths, and him and Judy, they're. I mean, you get the feeling they were going out, maybe engaged. I think they were engaged, weren't they? They were going to start a family, start a life, and so many, young families were destroyed by the Vietnam War.
But even doesn't she say, like, I just, why do you have to go? Which I'm sure many girlfriends said to their boyfriends before they went off to.
Well, with Vietnam, it wasn't a choice.
I know it wasn't a choice, but I'm sure they probably just felt like saying that.
I agree with you. Yeah. Why is it you that were picked? Why were you drafted? And I felt that they kind of symbolized that lost generation that unfortunately lost their lives, in that war. And I think it's done very subtly, but I think it very powerfully suggest that with not a lot, you know, they're not a huge part. They're not like their characters aren't dived into
Mm.
a whole lot.
I think like every character, obviously there's different levels of how main they are in the cast, but I think every character kind of has a moment
Mm.
in the story.
Yeah.
Like just going on to Helen, like, you know, not only does she have kind of the weight of like a child who, you know, they fear could be infected or whatever happened when she was attacked,
Yeah.
but she also has the weight of like the baggage of like a really kind of impulsive and disagreeable husband who's just looking to clash with anyone and won't. It's very hard for him to see reason and kind of just collaborate and um, you know, just
Work together. Yeah,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
I agree. Like, that was one of the kind of the real kind of real moments in the film that I really liked was that that tension between her and Harry is that clearly their marriage being held together by sellotape.
Yeah. Well, they touch on it like kind of that they're
You know,
it's pretty frosty, like their
yeah, and
relationship.
you get the feeling that the only reason they're together
It's because of their daughter.
is for the daughter.
Yeah. But like she says to him, like, you know, it's important you be right and they be wrong, isn't it? You know, and like I think she very much wants to side with him.
Yeah,
but she's a part of her that feels the responsibility that I have to side with my husband.
Of course.
But and she said she's kind of weighted down with that, and then also with the predicament with her daughter, so she's kind of up against it. I thought Helen was one of the most interesting characters actually in the film.
Yeah, she has an interesting arc in it. Yeah,
and then obviously the ending when she witnesses like her husband being shot.
Yeah,
and like I suppose part of her feels like he did bring it on himself, but she still dared to witness her husband being shot to death and then been eaten alive by their daughter. And then, as we said in the horror section, like the way it goes for her, you know, it's pretty brutal.
Yeah.
You know, like she basically dies of shock even before.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, seeing your daughter, who you've been, so worried about, and obviously loved her entire life, eat her husband, no matter how she feels about him. Seeing her daughter do that to her husband, I mean, you can't imagine what that would do to a person. And then, you know, witness her daughter murder herself. Like, just, I can't think of a worse way to go, to be honest. But and it's interesting about those two because they are, I feel like, the kind of maybe the most real element of the film in some ways is that scene with them in the basement that was cut short. They were forced to cut that short by the distributor, but it took out 6 minutes from that scene.
Of the dead scene?
No, of them fighting downstairs in the basement.
It's pity because you could have.
Yeah, I would have been interesting. I think it's lost. I think those scenes are lost, because there was a flood. Actually, where they filmed that was George Romero and his crew were like an ad agency. They used to not an agency, but a production company that made ads for ad agencies, and they had a studio in Pittsburgh, I think it is, and that's where they worked, and that was the basement of the building where their office was. So they filmed it in that basement of their own office. But there was a flood, and the original film was destroyed in the flood, and that's why that scene is now lost. But yeah,
just with Harry, like then, like he, just kind of touching him for a minute, like he's always complaining. You know, he's argumentative, and a lot of time he's not helping at all, and he almost becomes an obstacle like the zombies. Because Tom doesn't want to go against him, but he sees like, look, we should, you know, work with Ben here. You know, it's better to kind of stick together. You know.
Yeah, I can see that.
But there's a whole thing of trust in the film as well. Like that's an issue. Like he doesn't trust Ben, and I think Ben doesn't trust him, and that's a big problem. They both want to be in charge. I think part of it for Harry's because, like, you know, Harry, it's like because he's a husband, he's sure at home he's kind of the breadwinner and kind of takes charge of whatever dealings they have in their everyday life. So not being able to have that now is alien to him as well as this whole other situation. So I think he's really just not dealing well at all with it, and then having someone else order him around, he can't take that, you know. So
yeah, no, I definitely, I think you have a point there. But I do have to say, I think when he first comes up, he's not saying a whole lot of things that are not true. Like he's giving his own opinion. He's saying he thinks it's safer in the cellar. He that's his genuine thought. And why would he just suddenly listen to some other person when he disagrees with him? Like this is his family and his daughter he's looking after. And then also like when Ben like gives him flack for not coming up when they heard a scream. Again, yeah, okay, I understand, but like think about it. You're terrified. You like Ben has witnessed, all kinds of things. I'm sure they all have. They've seen the dead eat and kill people. Like, and you've got a sick daughter and your wife. What are you going to do? Are you going to come up? Some might, but I think a lot wouldn't.
I guess it makes him much of a character. There's
Yeah,
different
like
ways you can look at it.
I think when he
Like-
first comes up, I think I'm not. I can understand and see where his character goes, and he goes into some dark places, obviously. But
But
at
do you know-
first, I think he's not that bad a character, person. at
I will
first.
say that, like, Joe and Ben goes out with Tom and Judy,
Yeah,
and he's trying to get back in the door. I part of me is like, I can understand why he was reluctant to open that door, because if he opens it, who knows if loads of them could come in now, you know what I mean?
that's the fear, and
Yeah.
I think I love that moment
It's a
where
situation where,
he
like,
just before Ben kicks it in, he makes a move to go to the door. Did you
Mhm.
notice that? Like I think he has decided to let him in
Mhm.
after some deliberation. He makes a move to let him in, but then Ben kicks it in. You can obviously understand why Ben is angry as well.
yeah, of course.
But one thing I thought was interesting, is that it's never really suggested, but I wonder is there racial tension between Ben and Harry. Like I
I
wonder.
mean, it's possible.
I think
It's
part of
definitely
the
possible.
again, I think if it is there and they not hit it very well, but they were much more subtle than they could easily have been, which I
Mhm.
like. But like, if you think about it, like in the 1960s, you have a man of his age. He's supposed to be maybe late 40s, early 50s,
Yeah.
right? So this man was probably born maybe like around 1920 or so, right? A man of that generation, is he going to feel comfortable with a black man having a gun in the house and nobody else does? Like, it would be ridiculous to suggest that there weren't a lot of white men at the time who wouldn't feel comfortable with that in real life. And I wonder if that's part of that's part of why there's so much tension between the two of them straight away. That Ben can see something in him, and that he can see something in Ben. Like they don't like each other straight away.
Mhm.
Because Ben doesn't have an issue with Tom.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's definitely possible. Like, I like that they don't
Yeah, they
on
don't
the nose
On the nose, yeah, it's not on the nose.
show that
yeah,
you.
yeah,
but
yeah.
It's definitely something that
Um,
is a possibility. I guess Barbara next.
yeah,
Well, I just have, like, for her, like, obviously pretty harrowing situation, like the whole thing with her brother, and then that big long chase. So she does go through a lot in the early stages, but she just basically becomes a mute after that.
Yeah.
Like, she doesn't really do much
yeah.
after that first portion.
I thought it was a shame, to be honest, because she starts off interesting. And like she goes into a very believable traumatic state
Mhm.
after seeing her brother die. I mean,
Yeah.
of course, I mean, and obviously seeing the dead rise or whatever, I mean, very much understand that. And she starts coming around to Ben as they kind of share stories, and then she gets frantic and demands that they go outside to save her brother Johnny, and he hits her and knocks her out. And when she wakes up, she's not in the film again in a way until Johnny takes her out. Like, she doesn't
When
really
she's
do
trying to
anything.
help Helen at the door. Or no, was it Judy or Helen with the door, I think.
Yeah, but like there's very little. She does get up to help.
That's what I'm saying, just that little bit she kind of
Yeah.
gets out of the
She's
trance.
finally
But
get a
that's
chance. But
kind of
like
it.
there's so much of the movie she's doing nothing.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I felt like it was a waste of a character. Like if Judy had filled that role instead, it would have made more sense. And you developed Barbara more.
I do like that they kind of start with Barbara, and then, like, obviously Ben's the main
Switches to
character,
Ben,
but then
yeah.
he emerges as the main character. I like that they do that.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I just felt like it was a waste of potential because Judy doesn't really do anything. Helen has, as you said, some good moments.
Helen,
but
I
she's
think
not
Helen
in,
is
she's
a very
not
good
in a
play.
huge
Helen
amount.
is
She's downstairs for a lot of the movie. I thought it would have been more. I would have liked to have seen more Barbara in a even in a frantic state, something. Just she's kind of doing nothing for a lot
That's what I'm
large parts.
saying.
And I was a little disappointed in her character. I thought it was a missed opportunity. Um, Ben.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about Ben actually is that the role originally was supposed to be a gruff truck driver.
From what I heard was, I think George Romero, someone said that he came in and gave the best audition. So it was like,
Yeah, he
he's
came in
getting
and
the role.
gave the audition,
Mm.
but not only was his audition so good, it was that when the way he spoke and the way he spoke in real life, he was very, very intellectual and very well read. That they changed the character to fit around him.
Mhm.
So like his character was a lot more gruff and angry and less well spoken, but they changed the character to fit him because his audition was so strong. So I mean, just the fact. I mean, it's not common for the hero of a movie in 1968 to be a black man.
Mm.
That alone, I mean, it's unfortunate that you have to say that, but
Mm.
that is the truth. I mean, I can't remember looking back, any films that I've watched from that era that were the hero is a black guy. I mean, except for black exploitation cinema or something. But
I thought Blackula was.
well, I know the Simpsons one, but yeah, there's loads of like films like that. But they were made by black people
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
black market. But this is, even though it's an independent release, it was aimed at anybody, whoever, and he was a black actor because he was the best actor for the role, and it's striking, and especially
As it would be today rather than back then. George Romero obviously just he's an actor. He read great,
Yeah.
so he's getting it. That's it.
That's it.
There's nothing else to
Yeah.
deliberate about.
but especially of the time, it was a braver choice, even
So, yeah, very
than it
much
would
so,
be
yeah.
now, because there are people who wouldn't have gone to the cinema to watch the film simply because the black guy
Mm.
is the lead. I mean, that's how racist America.
Anyway,
openly
just
was.
with the character though, so he's quite patient with Barbara initially.
Yeah,
Like he's getting to action, getting things done, but he kind of realizes that he needs her help as well. So he's not going to push her too much initially. You know what I mean? Joni's asking her questions, and he kind of sees obviously something has happened to her. So in some ways, you wonder though, did he kind of like when he saw her first, was it like a reprieve to him, like, oh thank God? But then when he realized the state she was in, did that dwindle fast?
yeah.
Like,
He
it's like,
realizes she's a burden
yeah,
rather than a help.
yeah. But to be fair, at the other side, like he didn't see or witness his family member dying or pretty much dying.
No, but we do hear him tell that story.
Yeah.
That story, which I think is the best acting of the film, and maybe the best scene of the film, possibly. That monologue scene where he just tells us the story of the man, his screams when he's on fire, and seeing him be devoured, and it is a phenomenal moment, and it's an excellent piece of acting.
In saying that, though, you could also say that Ben was fortunate, though, that he found out in that manner, whereas Johnny, Barbara's brother, was not so fortunate that he walked into it. So, and obviously it was harrowing, but he was one of the lucky ones. And it's just about fortunate circumstances for a lot of them.
Yeah,
when you found out and you've time to act on it.
It's not like it's all skill and tactics. It's a lot of it would be fortune or misfortune,
which is kind of cruel and scary in itself.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, but
I mean, Ben was not so fortunate at the end of the film.
No, he wasn't. Yeah, but one thing before we go on to the end, one thing I really found interesting, and I was going to bring it up with Harry's section, but Harry was right. Where did Ben end up?
I know, I was thinking of myself.
In the cellar. And why did he end up there? Because they swarmed in. And did he survive the night? Yes. I love the fact that Harry was right and Ben was wrong.
Yeah.
I love that when characters aren't perfect, they don't make every right decision. Because in that situation, you don't know what you're doing. And you don't blame Ben for making the wrong call. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you say it's the wrong call, I mean, it could have gone right. That was the whole thing. We're talking about misfortune and fortune. It could have gone right. Like that petrol might not have leaked. They get into their truck, they drive away, they're hot scot free. It didn't work out that way. But Harry was right in that the cellar was the safest place in that house.
Yeah.
And it saved Ben's life tragically. you know, that he survives and then is murdered. Um, and that line was like, oh, great, that's another one for the fire.
Yeah.
Just the way it just so offhandedly. I mean, I know they don't think he's, a human, a living human, but we know, what that scene is about, and America knew when
But
they watched it.
I think as well why Ben kind of takes on the leader role is because he kind of does, for the most part, say things as they are. You know, like even like when he's having the disagreement with Harry, and he's like, "Well, he can be the boss down there, but I'm gonna be the boss up here."
Yeah,
He's sort of. But then he's like, when he says to Barbara, when she's like, she's telling that story, "We go back for Johnny, we go back for Johnny," and he doesn't want to hear what she's saying. But then eventually, he has to say what he doesn't want to say, which is, "Your brother is dead." He didn't want to have to say that to her, but then he has to say it to her because she keeps going on about it. And then, like when he tells Julie, when he asks about the daughter, and like she could be infected, so he's like, tell Julie to come up and to Helen, like, you go down and watch her because it's your daughter.
Yeah.
So he's, in that regard, he's saying things as they are, which you kind of have to do in that situation.
He's trying to take control of the situation because somebody has to,
Mhm.
or else everyone's going to die. Unfortunately, everyone did die
Yeah,
anyway.
and again, you're saying about everyone did die in the end. It comes down to that thing of trust. Trust is so fragile, but also it's very important. And then Ben tries to build it up with Harry, but then when Harry refuses to let him back in, not completely blaming Harry on that, I can understand from a certain way why he was afraid to do it, but that completely severs any bit of trust they may have had, and that's almost what lead that all. It's like a domino effect from then on in, where everybody perishes. Obviously, Ben a little later than the rest of them, but that's kind of the final tipping point where it all.
Yeah, when humanity doesn't work together, everyone fails. Is kind of what they're going for there. Yeah. We'll move on to 28.
Yeah.
So 28 days later. So I have Hannah first.
Okay.
Okay, so when you first meet her, obviously we have her peering through the apartment, but when they get in, like, she's quite forthright and gives her opinion. She's quite strong-willed, and she's not afraid to, like, say what she wants to say. Like, for example, when they're out in the balcony and Frank is saying, like, yeah, you're, the walls are thin. I heard what you're saying. You're right. We do need you more than you need us. And then Anna was like, no, that's not true. We all need each other. Like, just as much as you need us, we need you.
But even as well, when they're trying to come in and saying, like, let us in, and she's like, where's my father?
Yeah.
Where's my? She won't let him in until she knows her father's okay.
Yeah. So she's quite a strong character. And then we see her start kind of bonding with Jim and Selena, and you see, like, it's saying in that scene with the picnic and the horses, and you really see this family bond, as well as when they're shopping as well. But you see a kind of family bond build, and it really solidifies that group. But I have to say, when Frank dies, her reaction is truly baffling. Like, when after he's been shot like 7 times in the ground, she's just like, Dad? Like, do you know what it reminded me of? Gareth Marenghi's Dark Place. When Gareth walks in and his old friend literally explodes and his head smashes around the room. And Gareth just asks, are you alright? That's what it reminded me of. Like, honestly, it took me out of it. I was like, what?
Was she in shock, though, I think?
Yeah, I know. I think that's what they were going for. I think that's what they were going for. But I'll be honest, even though I thought the character was strong, I thought the actress was quite weak. I didn't think it was a great portrayal. What did you think?
Yeah, she wasn't great. She wasn't, like, terrible. But
she's quite monotone at times.
Yeah, she wasn't great. But she was fun. It didn't.
It took me out of
the experience.
It didn't ruin it, but it took me out of it a couple of times where I was like, surely they could have found a better actor than her. But she has some great moments later on, though. Like, well, I love that when she's drugged out and she's unnerving them, and like she knows exactly what she's doing. I'd say obviously the inhibitions of the drugs kind of freed her to kind of just say it.
And at this stage, she's just like, I'm effed anyway, so
Yeah, and then she runs off to get Frank's photo, and then saves everyone with her driving skills, which they set up earlier when she's driving over when they're getting the petrol,
Yeah.
and it's again like a lot of great films structure. Everything is there for a reason. You
Mhm.
set it up one place and then it pays off later
Yeah.
on. 'Cause if they just had her driving, you could ask like, "What? Hey, she's able to drive that well?"
Yeah.
But we establish that we can, and then in the moment we accept. Oh yeah, she's able to drive. We know this. So important moments like that. But yeah, I thought it was a good character. I just didn't think, I thought the portrayal was a little weak.
Yeah, I don't really have much else.
Okay.
going on. Major West.
Yeah, Major West. I have next as well.
Okay, I think he's very condescending. I find like when he taps Jim on the head, said it'll all be all right. He gives him the tap on the head.
Mm.
I find him very condescending, and from the get go, just something was I could tell something was off about him. Like
Yeah,
he was holding something back, which obviously we learn later what it is.
We know what it is. Yeah,
yeah.
but like, he's on the surface really friendly,
But, it's just
but you
something-
can just tell straight off there's something wrong
Mm.
here.
But like, it's interesting when he says to Jim, like saying, like, have you killed anyone? And he says, about the child, and he's like, yeah, you did what you had to do.
Yeah,
I'm doing what I have to do. I need these soldiers, so I need to keep them motivated. Like, it's basically like there's no rules anymore, so I have to do what I have
that's
to do.
exactly it.
It's horrendous. It's horrific, but it's like he's saying, "Look, I'm just doing what I have to do," and, you're kinda
And it's like, and then when he says, "You killed a boy, you killed a boy, you killed a child," like I feel like that his wheels are turning, going, "Well, if you can kill a child, then why can't we sleep with a child?
Mm.
Why can't we procreate with a child
Mhm.
to repopulate the humanity?"
I'd say he's loyal to his soldiers as well.
He very much so. I mean, he genuinely cares
Like
for
when-
his,
when-
as he
when
refers to them
guys
as his
impales-
boys.
When Jim impales that guy,
Yeah,
and he kind of just sits with him as he's dying. You
yeah.
know?
Oh, yeah. It was a lovely moment.
Mm.
There is real tenderness there,
Mm.
and even after at the very end, like when Jim goes in, it's like you killed my boys.
Mm.
It's not my soldiers. It's like he sees the moments as his kids.
Because they probably created some kind
Yeah.
of family dynamic, like our main characters had.
Yeah, he represents the dark side of humanity.
Mm.
That would most definitely rear up in a post-apocalypse situation.
Mhm.
Because one thing that kind of struck me was that like Frank was very welcoming of Selena and Jim, like very trusting of them, let him in straight away.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a real risk to take in a
Mhm.
situation like that. You would hope, maybe the fact it's only 28 days since the fall of civilization, that most humans, real humans, living humans, are willing to help each other. But obviously, I feel like that is a side of humanity that would unfortunately rear its head, and it reminded me of The Mist. In that film as well, I won't go into spoilers, but how humanity, the dark side of humanity, is actually almost scarier than the monsters outside as well. Similar here. So I thought he was a great character. Like when he talks about how the world to him the world's unchanged. It's just people killing people. I saw that beforehand. I've seen it now. There's no
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
Uh,
Frank?
Yeah.
So he's obviously the father figure.
Yeah.
And he says like how he feels he needs extra kind of protection for Hannah, kind of a fallback plan in case something happened to him. So that's obviously one of the reasons why he brings Jim and Selena
It's
in.
probably the main reason.
Yeah. But then there's also, I think, obviously, I was thinking like he obviously has lost his wife, and they do show a photo later that Hannah's looking at
Yeah.
of her with her parents. So I think he's trying to rekindle a kind of family dynamic,
Yeah. And and family is huge in this film.
Yeah.
As I said, the symbol of the horses as a family matched mirror the symbol of them as a family.
Well, for me as well, he's like the pillar
Yes.
for that family. Like it's when he stays awake when they all go to sleep.
Yeah.
When Jim's having that bad dream, he kind of comforts him.
That's a beautiful moment. I really love that moment. When he caringly wakes Jim and then smiles when Jim calls him dad.
And then when he dies, it's kind of the end of innocence and that happiness for the family. Everything just goes pear-shaped after that.
Oh, it's a really tragic scene. like I think I would go back a little bit for a second and we can come back to the death.
Mhm.
But like I love like say like about him, like he's genuinely lovable. Like he's funny and he's laid back and he's welcoming and
Mhm.
he puts everyone kind of at ease. And as you say, he is the pillar. He's the glue of that group.
Yeah.
Um, and all of that leads to you just feeling it so much more when he dies.
Mhm.
When you see him, this lovable person, first of all, actually, when he gets to the blockade and there's no one there, and you just see him snap, and obviously, even he can contain
Mhm.
it because
But that's
it's about saving Hannah.
mm,
That's what everything is for
yeah,
him.
yeah. When he says like go effing where,
No,
but
yeah,
like that to me is like a prelude to him getting infected
yes,
as
it
well,
is.
because you never showed him being angry
And then
like
yeah,
that.
he's one moment of frustration.
Yeah.
He looks up and blood drops into his eye, and you're just like, no, yeah. It just you feel it with the characters because when you care for a character, this is why I have a problem with a lot of really kind of poor slasher films and stuff like that. Is when you don't care about the characters being killed, then it's not scary. Doesn't impact you or affect you. But when you really care for a character and you see them meet a tragic end, it's really devastating. And then seeing him in his even in his moments of true anger, pushing Hannah away, saving her in the process, knowing that she needs to get as far away from him as absolutely possible. Like his last thought is save Hannah. Um, yeah, I really liked his role. Brendan Gleeson does an excellent job in this.
Selena,
Selena, yeah,
but like at the beginning, like her and obviously she's with Mark, they're like they're very cold, kind of in some ways, like in the way they kind of matter of factly just tell Jim that his parents are dead. But I think it's they've experienced far more of it than he has, so they're way beyond kind of the initial shock and the initial, you know, change in circumstances. So they're at another level. So they're almost immune to kind of pleasantries now, where they just have to say it as it is. Like we were saying in what was it with Night? We were saying about like how he has. Oh yeah, with Ben saying how he has to kind of say things as they are now. You're in that situation, so
yeah. No, I agree with you. I mean, like because they Mark talks about how his family died, and Selena says you're lucky that your parents died like that.
mm,
So like Jim has lost his family, Selena's lost her family, Mark has lost his family, but Hannah and Frank are still a family, and they're the only ones that are happy, relatively happy in this world. And it's only and like Selena isn't, Mark isn't,
mm.
Jim isn't. But when they combine together, like we're saying, family is a big theme in this film. When they come together as a family, that's when Selena becomes whole again.
And
But before that, that scene where she kills Mark,
yeah,
oh my god, like just out of nowhere. Because you think like Mark's gonna be, one of the main
mm.
characters, and then suddenly, nope, gone.
Well, like it just shows kind of how ruthless she is in that moment, in that like you can't hesitate if you believe they're infected. And remember, she says to Jim, he says like, "How did you know he was infected?" And she's like, "Well, I could see it in his eyes." And I think it's like whatever 10, 20 seconds, so you have to
Yeah,
make that decision very quickly.
yeah,
And she didn't hesitate at all.
yeah. No, but then obviously, as actually one thing that struck me, and it's kind of similar to a complaint I had with Barbara, although at a way different level. But it kind of annoyed me a little bit that she becomes a damsel for the almost the entire last, you know, great action sequence. She's just waiting for Jim to save her. Like I know they establish her as very strong at the start, and she saves Jim. He thanks her for saving him. On more than one occasion. And it's established that she's really strong and well able to handle herself. I'd say I'd have liked her even to help Jim, although maybe that mightn't have helped. It might have lost that emotion of where she thinks Jim is infected and she thinks he's dead, and then she hesitates. Um,
But I think it kind of comes full circle. The guy said like she rescues him at the start, and he's like very much dependent on her, and then it comes to that moment where and it also does a full circle thing where like when she So Joe, at the start she's very cold and very ruthless, and she's like, they'll slow us down. You can't. Jim says they're good people about Frank
Mm.
and Hannah, and like she's like, I wouldn't hesitate for a second to,
Put you
basically
down,
put
yeah.
him away if they caused us, if they just weren't helpful to us, or if they were, if they got in trouble, and
Yeah.
I could, but then you see like how she really lets her guard down when Frank is there, because I said, like, as I said before, he's the pillar, and she comes into this family thing,
Yeah.
with Jim and Hannah, and they're kind of and they're messing with the food, and you said the bit with the horses and all that, and the picnic. But then, like, when Frank is dead, and they come to the the soldier's base, and she says, like, it's all effed,
Yeah.
She says she's kind of breaking down and realizing that if she hadn't have let her guard down so much, she wouldn't have let herself come here and be in this situation. So that's her kind of coming full circle, almost coming back to where she was in the first place.
Yeah, no, no, no.
Mm.
I think it's a fair point. Like, he starts off as weak, and then
Mm.
she's strong, and she saves him, and then at the end,
But she's not weak at the end.
She's
It's
not
just
weak, but she's
it's a position that
vulnerable.
she can't do anything
Yeah, she's
about it because
vulnerable,
there's like
and
what
he and
10
he saves
soldiers.
her. No, I get that.
Yeah.
I think she could have put up a little more of a fight. Like, she's already established how good of a fighter she is.
I
She
know,
could have
but
done
you're like,
something.
what
Uh,
could she do? Like,
no,
there's like
no,
eight of them.
I'm not saying. I'm saying is the writers could have written it slightly different. I'm not
Okay.
saying that in the way it unfolded, she should have done something. I'm saying is they could have given her a moment where she did something. Because the writers are writing it, they can do whatever they want. I feel just I like the fact that Jim saves her after she saved him earlier. I mean that's fine. It's just she seemed totally, completely reliant in every way. Like, as if you came into the film, when they arrive at the base, you'd have no idea that she could fight. That's what I'm saying. But it's a smallish complaint. I mean, I still think her character had a great journey and arc throughout the film. Sorry.
Jimmy Boy?
Yep.
So when he wakes up in the hospital, like, it's literally a new world to him completely. And what I found very interesting was, so like, it's obviously most people are dead or everyone's gone. It's this barren kind of, and he's kind of closed in. Even the way he says hello, the way he says it seems so kind of almost stunted and some bit like it's not all getting out, and it's almost like because no one can hear him anyway. I always felt when he screams the hello, it's like he's not getting the full trajectory in his voice. Maybe that's probably because he's been lying in the hospital for God knows how long as well. But I always felt like,
28 days.
yeah, yeah. But when he's screaming hello, you can tell he's not fully getting all of it out there. It feels stunted kind of, and I thought that was kind of you
Yeah.
kind of feel that struggle in him. Like,
Yeah.
you're like,
I mean, he also, like, I think, yeah, that's a fair point. I think also I mean, just starting off, he is the classic audience surrogate.
Mhm.
Like, we discover the world through his eyes, because everybody else obviously has been awake and they know what it's like, but he doesn't know. And thankfully, he doesn't, because we get to learn along with him. But you see, the classic storytelling device. I'm not saying it's bad or anything, but it's used a lot. Where, like, often it's like Earthling, even in sci-fi, like, it's a human that goes to a different planet and then they discover the planet and we discover along with them. Um, it's just that he is that classic kind of trope. Again, I'm not saying it's good or bad. It's a thing. But yeah, I mentioned earlier, but I love the seeking the sanctuary in the church. And like, even like the first person he properly speaks to, or tries to at least, is the priest. Like earlier, I think doesn't isn't in his letter that his mother wrote to him. Doesn't she say God bless, something like that in it?
I think so.
Yeah, I think they're obviously religious.
Yeah.
We've got the hymns twice in the film. The first place he goes is a church, first sanctuary. He's calling to the priest, Father, and that is his first real interaction with a person since he's woken up, is a priest, and he says, "Oh God, I shouldn't have done that." Like, he feels so bad about it. Um, it's quite, it's like, I think it's, people often turn to religion at times of need, and it's like, you're not getting any solace from that here. That ain't gonna happen.
Or Joe, when he's sitting in the corner of that kind of shop, with Mark and Selena. He's kind of like a child almost. He's taking in all this information, and then the fact that his family is more than likely dead as well.
I mean, even that scene when
Yeah.
they're describing, like you're saying with Mark, when he tells that story, is really harrowing. But also, I was just thinking of Jim, like just learning, like that almost everybody you know and love is dead.
Mm.
I mean, I can't even.
And then it's like, everything is so new to him. But like, even though he barely knows Selena that long, he's like pleading with her, when they're going up the steps, like to wait for him and don't leave him there. So like,
Yeah, he latches onto her.
yeah, exactly. He doesn't want to be left alone again. He's like,
No.
she's almost like, I don't know, a pillar with Frank, but she's almost his pillar in that moment because it's all he has.
Yeah, and
Obviously,
he's very much aware of that. Like,
Mm.
like when that night when they're in the apartment and he thanks her, and she's just like, okay, he like very kind of brushes him off a bit, like, look, I mean, look, I think you seem a nice guy, and you're welcome to come along with me, but I don't expect you to last long. It's kind of the feeling I'm kind of getting at that moment.
And in this need for kind of companionship, you see it again when he says like how he thinks Frank and Hannah are good people, and
Yeah,
he wouldn't be so quick to disregard them
yeah,
if things got tough. And I think it's kind of that because he's lost his family, and this is like an alternate family, for him, kind of, or it's not a way for him to feel like he's part of a family again, especially in such a dire situation.
yeah, yeah. And like I was saying, earlier when we were talking about Frank, Frank starts fulfilling that he's looking for a father figure throughout the film. Like maybe you have the religion, God, Jesus, the priest, maybe. Then he goes to his parents, then Frank, and even then Major West in some ways. Kind of like he goes to him looking for salvation, looking for a savior, and then he becomes the savior.
Mm-hmm.
He becomes the father figure of the group. Then
the way I've just found a little strange with Joe when he starts wandering off. Joe and she's like, "Just stay close." And he's like, "It's like being my aunt, on holidays." And he's like,
that was
it was
so
a good line.
funny.
It was a good line.
That was so funny.
But I was like, what is he doing? But like, I feel like, then when he's like saying, he kind of calls out for someone to come, or one of them to come. And then when he kills the child, it's like he was letting out some aggression.
Yeah.
And we see it in a much larger kind of scale later in the film with the soldier. And I feel it's like he's letting out all his anger and frustration at, like, losing his family, Frank dying. And I think at that point, he's not sure if Hannah or Selena are even still alive. He doesn't know what's happening. I think he's letting out all that anger and frustration on that soldier, and also,
yeah, I mean, like
letting it all out.
Up until that point, he becomes like John Rambo, as I call it, John Rambo mode. And it's a great action sequence, really great stuff. He's stalking and taking them out one by one, and there's a callback, I feel, again without spoilers, for Shallow Grave. Again, we can't say who because we're very careful with spoilers here, but you know what I'm talking
We're giving
about.
spoilers on these anyway.
What? No. For Shallow Grave, I'm talking about.
We'll probably be talking about that at some point, I'd say.
Yeah, but we won't talk about it in this episode because if somebody clicks it going, "Oh, Night of the Living Dead," and 20 days later, and then we spoil Shallow Grave, they'll go, "You goddamn!" That would annoy me if I click the podcast. Okay. But my point is that you know what I'm talking about when I'm saying Shallow Grave in the attic, and the weapon.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like that's kind of there's a callback to that when the soldier comes up the ladder and he whips him with I think it's a crowbar or something. I feel like that was kind of it felt very similar to me. Maybe it wasn't a callback, but I thought of it straight away.
I felt he took a real chance letting the infected soldier free, yeah. But I'd say he probably felt like, look, if they can't get out of it, Selena and Hannah, they'd probably prefer to be taken out than to be in a situation. I think
he just he was in a rock and a hard place. He's like, what can I utilize here? Yeah. I can't take them all out on my own, but there is a time bomb inside, and he knows that if they hear a ruckus, the soldiers will try and protect the two of them because they want them alive. So he's thinking, look, they're going to try and protect them, but also take him out, and hopefully he takes some of them out, and then he can finish them off. Which is exactly how.
And the way Major West was saying he's trying to learn stuff from. Maybe we can learn stuff from him. That's why they have the one of them like chained up.
Yes, yeah.
I think as well that's a callback to Day of the Dead because they have one of the
zombies. I've never seen Day.
But they do have one zombie tied up, and one of the scientists is kind of trying to study stuff from him.
Right.
So I think that might be like with the shopping center supermarket scene with Dawn, that could be a callback to Day of the Dead.
Yeah, I think it's quite possible. Um, there's also interesting as well is that he's saying he's chained up to study to see how long it takes him to die.
Mm.
What is interesting is that after we jump to Jim waking up from another coma, and we pan over the beautiful countryside, and you see the dead in the road, and one of them drops down dying. It was 28 days later again.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's 28 days it takes for him to starve to death. That was Jim West's answer to the question: how long does it take for him to starve to death? 28 days. Or maybe 56 days, because maybe those guys in the countryside hadn't eaten since the start. But clearly there is a time where they just
Sell by date.
yeah they drop off. What did you think of the ending after the action sequence
Where
he wakes up and they're in the countryside?
that felt a little abrupt with the help thing.
Yeah, it was. There's some debate online because that wasn't the original ending. The original ending is actually, the film was quite different. I'm not sure they filmed a different ending, but there was one avenue they were going down where after Frank gets infected, they never meet the soldiers, and they go to a medical facility nearby that had been protected by the barricade, and it's where the chimps had been held in the first place. And there's a scientist barricaded in there who they're trying to get into, and he won't let him in. He won't let him in because he doesn't want to get attached to somebody who's going to die. And Jim is trying to break through, then talk to him, whatever, and then he brings Hannah over because they've contained Frank.
Okay.
He's still alive, and he brings Hannah up and explains what they want help with. So he tells them what to do. The only way to cure it is to do a full blood transfusion, and Jim is the only match. So Jim sacrifices his life
to save Frank,
so that Hannah will have a father. And but Danny Boyle, it was on the audio commentary that I was hearing that Danny Boyle was saying it, but he was saying it was too difficult to believe that they could get every single drop of blood, because they've established that like one drop is enough to turn you. So how are you going to how are you going to get rid of every single drop of bad blood in you and into somebody else? But in it, basically, Jim dies as a creature. Like, it's a very dark ending. I'm not sure why.
I didn't mind them
No, I'll be
surviving.
honest,
I was happy. I was glad, because you already had Frank kind of, and the way
Yeah.
Mark went as well.
I agree. I kind of liked it, to be honest. One thing I noticed straight away, though, is that it was shot on film. It wasn't shot on digital video. Did you notice that?
I
It
did.
it turned to HD straight away.
Which
and-
I guess maybe that represented kind of that they were in a safe place.
It's possible,
and better
yeah.
position.
I'd say it was also that it was refilmed, and maybe they just shot it on film as well, or at least they shot it on HD. If it wasn't film, it was HD digital video. But I liked it, to be honest, and I like the fact. I mean, I know there is a sequel 28 weeks later, and I've never seen it. I think you showed me the intro.
The opening scene is fantastic. It's one of the best horror scenes I've ever seen. Actually,
but apparently it gets terrible after that.
And apparently Danny Boyle only directed the opening scene, and that probably makes sense why the rest of it is not.
But so like I can disregard that film. 28 days later, it is a movie. I like the fact that they established that humanity can survive and come through it, because that was the message of the movie for me, was the hope that that when we see the horses, there's that moment of beauty, like I was saying earlier, that they see hope still left in this world, and then that hope is achieved at the end of the movie, where the jet sees them and he goes, "We gotta get some helicopters in here," like they're being rescued. I like the fact that it ends on a moment of hope. I'm not saying that dark endings can be amazing as well, but sometimes it's nice to have a little bit of hope, especially in these dark times at the moment.
Anyway, verdict on the final round. So
yeah, so again, it's a close one for me. Both have some very strong characters. Both have characters that don't stand out as much, but yeah, for me, I think I think Frank and Jim for me, are the two strongest characters, and they seal 28 Days Later for me.
Yeah, I think if we had had more of Helen, Helen and Harry in Night, because I think Ben is a really good character.
Oh, he is, yeah.
But I think he needed more. You need a couple of more characters. I think Helen and Harry are really interesting, but
Yeah,
we didn't see enough of them.
But Harry is prominent, and I think he's probably the most interesting character in the film for me. You think Helen, I think Harry, but we both think it's Helen or Harry. We don't think it's Ben, even though I think Ben is a good character.
No, I think Ben is as well.
But they go on, I think, more interesting journeys throughout the film. I feel, even though I think Ben carries the movie in a lot of ways, but I feel like the actual nitty gritty of what happens to them, there's more interesting things happen to Harry and Helen than Ben.
But yeah, but it's the fact that they're not. I would like to see a bit more of them, whereas we get to see a lot of Jim, Selena, and Frank. So I think
28 has a stronger supporting cast.
Yeah, so I think on that I would also go with 28 Days Later.
Okay, that takes it at 5-1 is the final score. It sounds harsh, Night of the Living Dead, because it is without a doubt an absolute classic horror film. It's for me, like, I've only seen Night and Dawn of Romero's films. For me, it's clearly better than Dawn. Like, I don't even think it's close, to be honest. I think like Night is without doubt one of my favorite horror films ever. But so is 28 Days Later. That's why we matched them up, because we thought that it would be a great matchup.
I just did remind you back to when RoboCop
I did think of
on a landslide lost to Terminator. So it happens sometimes where a great film does get
But Night is without doubt a truly great film. Important, but also still holds up very much today.
I think we need to remember as well as, like, even though we're comparing them, and we're giving a winner one over the other, we're still, for the most part anyway, praising films in general.
Yeah, I mean, like, we generally pick films
that usually positive reviews
that we either love or we expect we might like. We're not going to be doing Scary Movie anytime soon. We're going to be doing, and we will continue to do, movies that we either really enjoy or think that we might enjoy.
Although there might be a few here and there that we might
but I mean,
but for the most part,
it's something that we're willing to give a benefit of the doubt if we don't,
But we hope you enjoyed the first installment of the horror season.
It's going to be a jam-packed affair.
So next week it's going to be the original Dracula from 1931, Bela Lugosi, Universal, yes, versus 1931 Universal edition of Frankenstein, which I think
Boris Karloff.
Boris Karloff, yes, which I think will be a very interesting one. Again, they make sense, probably two of the most famous horror stories in existence, to be honest.
Yeah, two of the probably
pillars of
the two most famous horror novels ever written. Frankenstein, the first ever sci-fi book ever written, probably the first ever piece of sci-fi fiction ever, I think. Combined, and then obviously Lugosi and Karloff, two of the greatest actors in horror history, and two of the most iconic film adaptations. And we don't have to explain to you these characters, so we're very much looking forward to it. I have never seen Dracula. I have seen Frankenstein. Liam has seen both. So really interested to see where I fall on it. I don't actually know how Liam stands on it. I mean, I know he's into both of them, but don't know where he's going to fall one or the other. But looking forward to it very much so.
So we hope you'll join us for that edition next week as well. And until then, we'll leave it there. So.